Hello everyone, my name is Rex Geisler and I work for SAP. In this video we're going to actually see how to create a multi-tenant database in SAP Sybase IQ. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look outside of the PowerPoint, and we're going to go ahead and create a Sybase IQ or start up a Sybase IQ database. So if I double click on the icon under the SAP Sybase IQ program group on my desktop, we actually see that the Sybase IQ database is being started. Now this is version 15.4 of SAP Sybase IQ. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create or open up our interactive SQL, which is a DBI SQL GUI version, and be able to run some database scripts there. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start up our Sybase Central version 6.1 with the SAP Sybase IQ plugin as well, so that we can look at some of the tables and the users that are being created in this sense. Now before I get started, I want to explain what a multi-tenant database is. Within a multi-tenant aspect, we've got different groups of users that are accessing the same database. Now, if we look back historically at some of the database versions and structures, we see that we have two different architectures. One is in regard to SAP Sybase ASE, which then was carried over into Microsoft SQL Server, where we have one server and multiple databases to manage or administer. And then another one, which is the IQ and the Oracle model, which is one server that really has one database that's running underneath it. And so when we move from a one-to-many database architecture into a one-to-one architecture for server to database, then we may have to have multiple schemas or multiple tenants, so to speak, that are actually using this. And so reasons why we would want to do that also, besides the obvious, is to actually group the tables based on the information lifecycle management. So for instance, you could have a different grouping of tables, for instance different versions, in different development environments. Maybe you had several different development projects going on at the same time that are using different columns or schemas within those tables. The same way in a test environment or a production environment as well. So this easily supports multiple schema versions. And those schemas could, of course, have different objects based on them, not only tables, but also stored procedures, views, etc. Now, we also have another reason, and that's to actually separate an internal group of users based on, say, a business unit or a business role. And so we could have different groups within that type of multi-tenant database. Now we also have external groups of users based on, say, a customer's company or division or a network or a partner that you might want to allow access to the database, not necessarily to see all the data because you can put permissions on what's actually visible to each customer, but to actually get into that one database to manage. And then the last reason that you might want to consider this is to separate data into both hot and cold storage, where we're actually separating the tables themselves through partition placement into, say, less expensive type of devices or disk. Also, we could separate actual columns themselves because IQ is a column-based architecture, just like SAP HANA as well. And so we could separate out the columns that are not used as well as index. So that's really the beauty of having all of these schemas together, so you get a lot of extra benefits. Now, while there's security for those specific tenants, the overall owner or administrator of the data can analyze these cross-schema or cross-tenant type views, so you can get an upper echelon level view of this also. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to go to our interactive SQL, and we're going to open up a new script, and this particular script is going to create our groups for us. So the first step we're going to do is create a user called shared all, because we want to have some tables that are maybe shared across groups. And so we're going to call that shared all. And the second step we're going to do is to grant access for that user shared all to create objects. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to create that user as a group itself. And then we're going to do the same 3 steps for 2 more groups called Company A and for Company B. But what we're going to do is we're going to add one more line here, one more line in our script, in order to actually place Company A and Company B into the shared all group so that it will have all the accesses that shared all has as well. Now we're going to go to the SQL menu, and we're going to go ahead and execute that script through F5 or through the execute itself. And so you can see that that script ran very, very quickly. The next step we're going to do is we're going to have shared tables by the group shared all. So we're going to create a table under shared all, and what we need to do first is we need to go to the SQL menu and disconnect, because we had logged in as the DBA to begin with to create those users and groups to begin with. So we're going to disconnect, and then we're going to reconnect as the actual shared all group. And so I'm going to connect in here, and if we look over into our connection string, we can connect to a ODBC database, and here we've got a ODBC connection for shared all, and you'll also notice one for Company A and for Company B, so that we can compare the 3. So we're going to go into shared all to begin with, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create that table with 2 columns in it. Then we're going to insert 7 rows of data into the table drugs, and then commit it. And then we're going to grant select so that we can select from that particular table to shared all. So that will go down to the other 2 groups as well, Company A and Company B. And then we'll see what's actually in that particular table. Now again, I'm going to go ahead and execute, but I'm going to execute selection because it's a selected script. I don't want to do all of the lines, just so you can see that they finished, and you can see at the bottom some of these are rows that have been inserted, some of those 7 rows. And then we're going to go ahead and select from that as well, and we're going to execute that selection, and you can see that the data is actually in the database itself. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a table for both group Company A and for Company B. For the Company A group, we're going to use, call it drugs usage. Okay, so that's the drug number itself, and then we're going to insert 3 rows into that particular table. So those values are 1, 2, and 3. And first of all, we need to disconnect from our shared all user, and then we're going to go ahead and reconnect as Company A for our multi-tenant or multi-company type example here. Now I'm going to go ahead and execute this script, and it goes ahead and inserts those rows into Company A, and then with drugs usage as the table name for it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a table in Company B. The same table name, drugs usage, okay, but we're going to put in different values. You'll notice that we've got value 5, value 6, value 7 on the inserts themselves. Now again, we want to disconnect, and one thing you can see up here at the top in the actual program menu is the actual user that we're connected to the database with. In this case, it's Company A. We want to connect to Company B. So we're going to disconnect, and we're going to reconnect again with Company B in this case. Okay, so I'll go ahead and connect, and then we're going to go ahead and execute this script as well. So now we've got 2 tables, one under Company A, one under Company B, and a third table under shared all. Okay, the next step that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to look at the actual selects and the inserts. Okay, Now we're connected as company B, as you can see up here directly. And the key here is that we can access the shared all tables because company A and company B are involved or connected to shared all, but we cannot connect to each other. So company A cannot see company B's data. Company B cannot see company A's data as well. And so if we go ahead as company B and we go ahead and execute this script, then we'll go ahead and execute that script. We can see the actual data in there. So it's actually